Good afternoon and welcome to the first instalment of the Illuminated Models how-to series. We're going to start today by looking at some of the 8-pin decoder sockets. I've got a few in front of me. First one here is what we're going to be using today is the AL07, which is the 8-pin socket with the wording on for each solder tab. But other options include this one here, which is an AL15, which is the same as an AL07 but enables you to screw in the cables. And then for smaller spaces there's this one here, which is AL18. As you can see, it's got the tabs on the back there for the solder pads. Now today we're going to be fitting it to a hornby class 56. I've taken the body off before just to make it easier for doing this video. So if we start by taking off the body, placing that there, we can see that we've already cut the wires here, because what we're looking to do is fit the decoder socket there. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we do is we'll get a bit of double-sided sticky tape and we will stick this decoder socket in place just so it stays still while soldering. If we put that there, we can always trim it up later, it's just as a demonstration. So if we place this in, now as you can see we're going to be using 4 solder tabs: motor right, track left and motor left. It's going to require some unsoldering and soldering, but the first step is to obviously figure out what wire goes where. So if I just unscrew this plastic tab here, we'll be able to drop out the bogie. Now these decoder sockets have been designed primarily to take a non-DCC ready loco and turn it into a DCC ready loco, obviously for sound or anything like that. So there we go. So as you can see, we've got the motor terminals and a track pickup on this carriage and 2 track pickups on from this bogie. Now what we're going to do is, because this was an old Hornby one with lights, we're going to just get a soldering iron. A soldering iron will be needed, and we're just going to take off the two diodes which are for the lights, which we're no longer going to use. They'll be covered in a future video. Obviously, because of the age of this loco and the solder, it does require a bit of heat when removing the diodes. Sorry about that guys, we had a bit of trouble getting these diodes out of the solder hole. So next thing we need to do is look at tidying up this wire in here. Now firstly, there's a lot of dead ends here and there's a track pickup there which we're going to pay attention to in a minute. But what we want to do is unsolder these 2 tabs here, but remembering what colour goes where. I've got some jumper cables here, primarily to make it easier to see. I've got a red and a green one here, so that will replace that. So if we take off the red, it's quite hard, I'm having to use these, just using the soldering iron, applying some heat. They come off quite easily. It's quite a fiddly job, but it can only get easier now. So if we move that track pickup out of the way for the moment, we'll come back to that. And we'll take these 2 wires, they've already been pre-tinned each end, and then we will just resolder. I've got some rapid electronic solder here. Just re-tin the joints, just so the wire adheres nicely and you don't get any cold joints. There's a bit of a blob there. And then what we'll go and do is just solder on these 2 tabs here. So that's the yellow one done. Now lastly there's this green one here to do. Obviously green in this term goes to the black side. See, there we go, there's 2 there. So they're now in place. Now what we want to do is look at replacing this track pickup here. Now obviously on this Hornby loco it gets a bit fiddly. It's a case of undoing a few screws, dropping this, being careful of the gearing, and what I'm going to do is solder this wire in place of this here, just so it's longer lead really, and I'll come back in a second. Right, so that wasn't actually as hard as I thought. There was 3 simple screws and this carriage just dropped off. So what we're going to do now is just put a bit of solder on the soldering iron just to keep it nice and warm, and we're going to take this gently, well, simple as that, that comes off, and what we're going to do is just solder this cable on in its place here, like so, making sure you haven't got any cold joints. And then what you'll do is just reassemble the carriage as so, with obviously the screws in, making sure you get it the right way around, plopping that back in, and then putting the screws in, making sure they don't get any misaligned holes. Simple as that, and just screwing that in. So I'll do that quickly. Just and then the next part of this will be soldering it all up to the main board and then seeing if it works. Obviously one thing I would advise is, obviously if you are converting a non-DCC fitted loco to a fitted loco, to a DCC ready loco, just make sure that the loco runs smoothly first before carrying out all this work. So there we go, that's now back in place. I'm now going to screw this bracket back in to secure it in place, which isn't too hard. Right. One thing we've got to note is try and keep it so that the cables run the same way as the old cables, which come up through here. I know my fingers are in the way, but you'll be able to see afterwards. Just like that. Then refit this little clip. Just making sure you don't pinch any cables, just like that, and then screwing it back in. So you're now left with 4 distinct colours, which we'll be able to solder onto the board. And welcome back guys after a little refresh. Now we've got these 5 wires, what we're looking to do is now solder them onto the 4 soldering pads we spoke about earlier. So the first and best thing to do first is to get your soldering iron and just lightly tin the pads. As you see that, you just feed the solder in and it will just spread itself out across the solder pad. There's nothing too real complex about it. The beauty with these is they've got quite large solder pads, so if you're not great at soldering, it doesn't really matter, because obviously there's quite a large gap and you won't short it. So first of all, if we take the black wire and we put this on the track L, so we just take the soldering iron, just gently reheat it, just making sure you don't get any other cables in the way, like that one. Just gently reheat it on top and it will just flow into itself like so. Just leave it to cool for a bit, and then what we do is we'll take the other 2, these 2 here, connect the 2 reds together, just give them a little twist as well if you've got more than one track contact coming to it. Just makes it easier, like so. Turn the loco if it helps. And then what you want to do is just take these, they've come undone, and you just want to gently like that, just lay them on top and just put your soldering iron there just to let it reheat, and it flows in like so. So there we go, there's that's the track power. So obviously when the loco goes back together, you can tidy these cables up. Then from that, now it's time for the motor cables. So obviously turning it back round so the little writing's the right way up. We've got motor left and motor right, and obviously motor right went to the red connection here, and motor left went from the black connection here, and I'm just going to check that. Hello guys, so after checking, finding out which, turns out the yellow was the red, so we're going to solder that on first. So this one here will go to motor right, because obviously it matches up with the red which was on track right. Obviously you can make these cables just a little bit longer, but I'm just going to lightly again, all just burnt myself, just going to lightly just solder that in place, like so. Same with the green, which was the original black. Just going to lightly solder that there. And there we go. That's it all wired up. Just got to tidy some of these cables up, and if you want you can put a decoder socket straight in, or if you still want to run on analog DC you can even put a blanking plate in and just swap it over when you want. That's the beauty of using these sockets. There's no need to cut and resolder. You solder once and then it's all done. You can just plug in and play as you want. The next video we're going to be doing is going to be looking at some more of these pins and using some of the cab lights that Illuminated model produces. You can have an option of yellow and white. They're small, and what we do is we solder them onto these boards here for DCC use. But yeah, that's the first video. Thanks very much if you've listened to all of this, and I hope you like and subscribe, and if not, pop over to the website where you can purchase these and the other two options which we spoke about earlier at, well, I'll put a link in the description below. Thanks a lot. Just a small little edit again. This circular dot up here, as it is on the other decoder sockets, represents pin 1. But for now, just to make sure everything's working right in the right direction, I'm just going to put this hornby blanking plate in and give it a test run. Hope it all works. If it doesn't, if it works in the opposite direction, all you've got to do is change either the track polarities or change the motor polarities. Thanks a lot.